Jake Murphy wiped the grease from his hands and stared at the starship engine in front of him. The cooling system had 3 leaks and he needed to fix them before the ship could leave the station. He didn't mind the work. Actually, he loved it. There was something peaceful about fixing machines, about making broken things work again. "Hey Jake, you seeing this?" Pete Collins ran into the workshop holding his datapad. His face showed excitement mixed with disbelief. Jake looked up from the engine. "Seeing what?" "The Draconians. They sent a message to the Galactic Council. You won't believe what they're offering." Jake put down his wrench. The Draconians were a big deal in the galaxy. They were huge, powerful aliens who looked like dragons from old Earth stories. They had scales, wings, horns, and tails. They ruled a massive empire and treated most other species like they were less important. Humans and Draconians didn't get along very well. "What are they offering?" Jake asked. Pete turned his datapad around. "A marriage. Between one of their princesses and a human." Jake raised his eyebrows. "That sounds like progress. Maybe they want to make peace." That's what everyone thought at first. But look at this. Pete played a video message. The hologram showed a massive Draconian sitting on a throne. His scales were silver and gold, shining like metal. His horns curved up like a crown. This was Emperor Vexthor, ruler of the Draconian Empire. He spoke in the common language that most species use to communicate. "The Draconian Empire wishes to offer an alliance with humanity," the Emperor said. His voice was deep and powerful. "We will send one of my daughters to marry a human. This is Princess Kirisish, my 5th daughter." The hologram changed to show a female Draconian. She stood alone in a large room looking at the camera with amber eyes. She was tall, maybe 7 feet, with bronze-colored scales. Her horns curved slightly, not perfectly straight. Her wings were folded against her back. Her tail moved slowly behind her. "She is available for marriage," the Emperor continued. His tone made it clear this was not an honor. "We send her to the humans, who perhaps will appreciate what we do not. Let them have her," the message ended. Pete looked at Jake. "Everyone's saying it's an insult. The Draconians think she's ugly, so they're sending her to us like a joke, like saying we're not good enough for a real princess." Jake stared at the frozen image of Princess Kirisish on the datapad. He didn't understand. "Ugly? Are they serious?" "By their standards, yeah. I looked it up. Draconians like shiny scales. Hers are matte like brushed metal. They like perfect horns. Hers curve a bit funny. They like big wings and long tails. Hers are smaller than average." Pete shook his head. "So they treat her like garbage and now they're offering her to us. It's meant to be offensive." Jake took the datapad from Pete and looked at the image again. Princess Kirish didn't look ugly to him. She looked strong. Her scales caught the light in interesting ways, like hammered bronze. Her eyes showed intelligence and something else. Sadness, maybe, or loneliness. Her compact wings looked powerful, not weak. Everything about her suggested strength and grace. "I think she's beautiful," Jake said quietly. Pete laughed. "Come on, man. I know you're being nice, but you don't have to pretend." "I'm not pretending." Jake zoomed in on her face. There was something in those amber eyes that made him want to know more about her. "I really think she's beautiful." The next day, the station was full of gossip. The Galactic Council had decided to handle the situation carefully. They would hold a lottery among human males on the station. Whoever won would be the official groom. Most people thought nobody would actually go through with it, but it would give everyone time to figure out a diplomatic solution. Jake returned to his workshop, trying to focus on his work. But he kept thinking about Princess Kirish. How did it feel to be told you were ugly your whole life? To be sent away as a joke? Pete burst into the workshop again. "Dude, I did something funny." "What did you do?" Jake asked, though he had a bad feeling about this. "I signed you up for the lottery. As a joke, I mean, the odds are like 1 in 10,000. There's no way you'll actually be picked." Jake should have been angry, but he just went back to his engine. "Okay." 3 hours later, alarms rang through the station. Everyone's datapads got the same message. The lottery was complete. A name had been selected, Jake Murphy. Pete ran into the workshop, his face white. Oh no, Jake, I'm so sorry." "I didn't think... what are the odds?" Jake sat down on a toolbox. His hands were shaking a little. He had actually been picked. Carol Henderson, his supervisor, came to see him within the hour. "Jake, you don't have to do this. We can say you're medically unfit. We can find a way out. Nobody expects you to actually go through with this insult." Jake looked at the image of Princess Kirisish on his datapad. She was looking off to the side in the picture, like she didn't want to face the camera. He wondered what she was thinking when they took this photo. Did she know they would use it to mock her? "What if I want to do it?" Jake said. Carol stared at him. "What? What if I actually want to accept?" Jake stood up. "Look, the Draconians are trying to insult us. They expect us to laugh and refuse. Everyone expects that. But what if we don't? What if I actually go there and treat Princess Kirish with respect? Jake, this could be dangerous. You'd be alone on a Draconian world, surrounded by aliens who think this is funny. Maybe it's time someone took the high road," Jake said. "Maybe it's time someone showed that princess that not everyone thinks she's worthless." Carol studied his face for a long moment. "You actually think she's pretty, don't you?" Jake nodded. "I think she's beautiful, and I think she looks lonely. I want to meet her." That evening, Jake called his sister Lynn on Earth. She worked as an analyst for the Human Defense Coalition. When he told her what happened, she was quiet for a long time. "Jake, why would you agree to this?" she finally asked. "Did you see the picture of her?" Jake pulled up the hologram. Lynn looked at Princess Kirish. "Yeah, she looks fine. Strong, actually. She looks more than fine, Lynn. She looks amazing. And everyone in her life has told her she's ugly. Everyone. Her own father sent her away as a joke." Jake felt anger rising in his chest. Someone needs to show her that she has value. Someone needs to treat her like she matters. Lynn smiled sadly. "You always did root for the underdog. Be careful, okay? The Draconians might not appreciate you being nice to her." "Then they can deal with it," Jake said. 2 days later, Jake boarded a diplomatic shuttle headed for Draknor, the Draconian homeworld. He packed light. Some clothes, some tools, and the datapad with Princess Kirish's picture. He looked at that picture a lot during the journey. As the shuttle flew through space toward the Draconian system, Jake wondered what would happen when they met. Would she be angry? Would she think he was making fun of her? Would she even want to meet him? He hoped she would give him a chance. He hoped she would see that he was being honest. Because the truth was simple. Jake had looked at her picture and seen someone special, someone worth knowing, someone beautiful. The stars slid past the window and Jake watched them, nervous but determined. In a few days he would meet Princess Kirish. Whatever happened after that, he wanted to at least try to show her kindness. She deserved that much. On Draknor, in a palace built into a mountain, Princess Kirish received news that a human had actually accepted the marriage proposal. She sat in her chambers, alone as usual, and tried to understand why someone would agree to such an obvious joke. Probably he was forced to do it, she thought. Probably he hates this as much as I do. But a small part of her, a part she tried to ignore, wondered if maybe, just maybe, things could be different this time. She looked at her reflection in the polished metal of her chamber wall. Bronze scales, crooked horns, small wings, all the things her family said made her unworthy. She turned away from her reflection. Hope was dangerous. Hope only led to disappointment. Better to expect nothing and avoid the pain. But still she wondered about this human named Jake Murphy. She wondered why he said yes. The shuttle landed on Draknor 3 days later. Jake stepped out and immediately felt small. Everything was huge. The landing platform was built for creatures twice his height. The doorways were massive. The ceiling seemed miles away. Architecture rose in sharp angles and curves built into cliffs and mountains. Cities of crystal and stone stretched as far as he could see. 2 draconian guards met him at the landing pad. They wore armor that gleamed in the red sunlight. Their scales were dark green and blue. They looked at Jake the way someone might look at an insect. "Human," one of them said. "Come with us. The Emperor will see you." They walked through corridors that made Jake feel tiny. Other draconians passed by, their wings creating wind that pushed against him. They stared at him with curiosity or contempt. Some hissed to each other in their own language. Jake didn't need a translator to know they were making fun of him. The throne room was the biggest space Jake had ever seen. It could hold thousands of people. Hundreds of draconian nobles sat on ledges carved into the walls, their wings folded, watching. At the far end, on a throne made of black stone, sat Emperor Vexthor. The Emperor was massive. 12 feet tall at least, maybe more. His scales were silver and gold, catching the light like mirrors. His horns rose up like a crown. His wings folded behind him were each 30 feet across. When he looked at Jake, his eyes were like molten gold. "So, the Emperor said. His voice filled the room. A human actually came. I am surprised. Jake bowed, the way he'd been taught. Your Majesty, I'm honored to be here. Several nobles laughed. The Emperor's expression didn't change. Honored. You say this with a straight face. Interesting. He leaned forward. You know why you are here, human? You are here because I have a daughter nobody wants. I thought to make a joke by sending her to your kind. Yet you came anyway. I came because I wanted to meet Princess Kirish, Jake said. His voice was steady despite his nervousness. Why? The Emperor's eyes narrowed. Do you plan to mock her further? To humiliate her in some human way? No, Your Majesty. I came because I saw her picture and I thought she was beautiful. The throne room went silent. Every Draconian stared at Jake. Some looked shocked. Others looked angry. The Emperor's eyes widened slightly. Beautiful, he repeated. You call Kirish beautiful? Yes, Your Majesty. The Emperor studied Jake for a long moment. Then he gestured to a side door. Bring her in. The doors opened. Princess Kirish entered and Jake's breath caught. The picture hadn't done her justice. She was magnificent. 7 feet of coiled strength and grace. Her bronze scales caught the light in complex ways like metal that had been worked by a master craftsman. Her amber eyes glowed. She wore ceremonial armor that seemed designed to hide her body. But even that couldn't hide her powerful presence. She walked to the center of the room and stood facing Jake. Her expression was carefully neutral, but Jake could see tension in her shoulders. She thought this was going to be another humiliation. She was waiting for him to laugh or run away. Jake stepped forward and bowed to her. Then, in the Draconian language he'd studied during the trip, he spoke carefully. I am honored to meet you, Princess. You are more beautiful than any picture could show. Kirish's eyes went wide. Her mouth opened slightly in shock. Around the room, Draconians hissed and roared in surprise. Some sounded angry. Others sounded confused. No one had expected this. Emperor Vexthor stood up from his throne. You speak our language? A little, Your Majesty, Jake said, switching back to the common tongue. I'm not very good yet, but I wanted to try. The Emperor looked between Jake and his daughter. Kirish was staring at Jake like she couldn't quite believe he was real. Her tail moved slowly behind her, a sign of confusion or nervousness. This is unexpected, the Emperor finally said. Very well. You will follow our customs. For the next 7 days you will meet with Princess Kirish under supervision. If either of you wishes to end this arrangement, you may do so. If both of you agree to continue after 7 days, we will proceed with the marriage ceremonies. Jake bowed again. Thank you, Your Majesty. The Emperor waved a hand in dismissal. As the guards led Jake away, he looked back at Kirish. She was still staring at him, her amber eyes full of questions. The next day, they met in a formal sitting room. 2 guards stood by the doors. A court official sat in the corner watching everything. Kirish sat on a bench designed for Draconians. Jake sat on a smaller chair across from her. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Kirish said in perfect common tongue, Why did you say that? Yesterday in the throne room. Say what? Jake asked. That I'm beautiful. Why would you say that? Because it's true. Kirish's tail lashed once. You don't have to pretend. I know what I am. I know what my people think of me. I'm not pretending, Jake said gently, and I don't care what your people think. I care what I think. And I think you're beautiful. She looked away. You're either lying or crazy. Maybe both. Can I ask you something? Jake leaned forward. What do you like to do? When you're not dealing with all this diplomatic stuff. The question seemed to surprise her. What do I like? Yeah, what are your hobbies? What makes you happy? Kirish was quiet for a moment. I work with machines. In the palace workshops, I design things, repair things. She said it defensively like she expected him to laugh. Jake's face lit up. Really, what kind of machines? Engines, mostly. Energy systems. I've been working on a better shield generator design. She watched him carefully, waiting for mockery. Instead, Jake grinned. That's amazing. I'm a mechanic. I work on starship engines. Can I see the workshops? For the first time, Kirish's expression changed. A hint of interest showed in her eyes. You want to see the workshops? I'd love to, if that's allowed. The court official in the corner cleared his throat. It is unusual but not forbidden. Kirish stood up. She was so much taller than Jake that he had to look up to meet her eyes. Follow me, she said. The palace workshops were incredible. Huge machines filled massive rooms. Energy cores hummed with power. Tools of all kinds hung on walls or rested on tables. Draconian engineers worked on various projects, their claws handling delicate components with surprising precision. Kira Sesh led Jake to her personal work area. Blueprints covered one wall. Half-finished projects sat on benches. She picked up a small device. "This is what I've been working on. A portable shield generator. Most shields need huge power sources. I'm trying to make one that a single soldier could carry." Jake studied the device with genuine interest. "That's brilliant. How are you handling the power distribution?" They talked for hours. The guards and official eventually sat down, bored. But Jake and Kirish discussed engineering problems, compared design philosophies, and shared ideas. Jake was impressed by her knowledge. Kirish was surprised by his creative solutions to problems. "Humans always do things the hard way," she said, but she was almost smiling. "You work around problems instead of solving them directly." "We call it improvising," Jake said. "When you don't have the best materials or the most powerful tools, you learn to be creative." "It's clever," Kirish admitted. "Inefficient but clever." As the sun set, turning the sky purple and orange, Kirish walked Jake back to his quarters. At the door, she hesitated. "Why are you really here?" she asked quietly. "The truth." Jake met her eyes. "The truth?" "I saw your picture. I saw someone strong and intelligent being treated like she was worthless. And I wanted to meet you. I wanted to know you. That's all. No games. No tricks." Kirish studied his face for a long time. "I don't understand you, Jake Murphy." "Maybe we can figure each other out together," Jake said. After he went inside, Kirish stood in the corridor for a moment. Her hand touched the door where Jake had disappeared. Something strange was happening in her chest. Something she hadn't felt in years. It felt almost like hope. She walked back to her own chambers slowly. The palace was quiet at night. Most of the nobles were in their quarters or at evening social gatherings. Nobody would invite her to those. They never did. But tonight, for the first time in her life, Kirish didn't feel completely alone. Someone had looked at her and seen beauty. Someone had listened to her talk about her work and been genuinely interested. Someone had treated her like she mattered. She didn't trust it yet. Trust was dangerous. But she was curious, and curiosity was enough for now. In his quarters, Jake worked on a small project. He'd borrowed some spare parts from the workshop. His hands moved with practiced skill, shaping metal and connecting components. He worked late into the night, creating something small but meaningful. Tomorrow he would give Princess Kirish a gift. And maybe, just maybe, she would start to believe that he was telling the truth. Over the next 5 days, Jake and Kirish spent every allowed moment together. They worked in the workshops, combining human and draconian engineering techniques. Jake taught Kirish about modular design and redundant systems. Kirish showed Jake advanced energy management and materials science. Their different approaches created solutions neither could have found alone. Other draconians watched this with mixed feelings. Some engineers respected Jake's clever solutions. Others thought he was corrupting proper draconian methods with human shortcuts. But nobody could deny that Jake and Kirish worked well together. On the 6th day, Jake gave Kirish his gift. It was small, made from spare workshop parts. A mechanical dragon in flight about the size of his hand. The metal was bronze-colored, carefully shaped and polished. "I made it to match your scales," Jake explained, "because I think that color is beautiful." Kirish held the tiny dragon carefully. Her claws could have crushed it easily, but she was gentle. She didn't speak for a long moment. When she looked up, her amber eyes were bright with emotion. "No one has ever made something for me before," she whispered. "Not like this. Not something that says I'm—" She couldn't finish the sentence. "Beautiful," Jake finished for her. "Worth caring about, special." That night, Kirish did something improper. She went to Jake's quarters after dark. She shouldn't have. It broke protocol. But she needed to talk to him privately without guards or officials watching. Jake answered the door in casual clothes, surprised to see her. "Kirish, is something wrong?" "I need to know the truth," she said. "Before tomorrow, before we have to make our final decision." "I need to know why you're really doing this." Jake stepped aside to let her in. The room was small for her, designed for human-sized visitors. She had to fold her wings tightly and lower her head slightly to fit comfortably. "What do you want to know?" Jake asked. "Everything. Why did you accept this arrangement? What do you want from me?" What do you hope to gain? Jake sat on the bed. Kirish settled on the floor, her tail curling around her. For a moment, he just looked at her. The bronze scales, the amber eyes, the slight curve to her horns that made her face more interesting, more real. I was happy before, he said finally. I had a good job, good friends, a simple life. I didn't need anything more. Then I saw your picture, and I saw someone amazing being treated like garbage. It made me angry. Angry? Kirish tilted her head. Furious, Jake corrected. Your father sent that message expecting humans to laugh. He wanted to humiliate you and insult us at the same time, and everyone just accepted it. Everyone agreed that you were the joke. He met her eyes. But I looked at you and saw something else. Someone strong, smart, beautiful, someone who deserved better. So you came out of pity? Her voice was cold. No, I came because I wanted to meet you. Because something in that picture called to me. I can't explain it better than that. Jake stood up and walked closer. He had to look up to meet her eyes even when she was sitting. These past 6 days have been the best days of my life. Talking with you. Working with you. Learning from you. I don't want this to end. Kirish's tail moved slowly behind her. My sister came to see you. Zarakesh. She tried to seduce you, didn't she? Jake blinked in surprise. How did you know? Because that's what she does. She's beautiful by our standards. Perfect scales, perfect horns, perfect everything. She probably thought you'd drop me immediately for a chance with her. I wasn't interested, Jake said simply. Why not? She's everything I'm not. Exactly. Jake reached up and gently touched Kirish's face. She froze, unused to being touched with tenderness. She's not you. I don't want perfect scales or perfect anything. I want someone who understands what it's like to be underestimated. Someone who loves engineering as much as I do. Someone who makes me think and challenges me and surprises me every day. I'm not human, Kirish said quietly. We're completely different species. This could never really work. Why not? Who says it can't work? Some rule book? Some tradition? Jake smiled. I'm a mechanic. When something seems impossible, I find a way to make it work anyway. And this is worth making work. Kirish looked at the mechanical dragon sitting on Jake's desk. Such a simple gift, but it meant everything. It meant someone saw her as she wanted to be seen. Strong, beautiful, free. Tomorrow we have to decide, she said. If we both agree, we'll be married within a month. If either of us refuses, this ends. What do you want? Jake asked. I want to believe this is real, Kirish admitted. I want to believe you mean what you say. But I'm afraid. Hope has hurt me before. Jake took her large hand in both of his smaller ones. Then don't hope. Just try, give us a chance. We can figure out the rest as we go. They talked through the night, about their childhoods, their dreams, their fears. Kirish told Jake about growing up as the disappointing daughter, always compared to her perfect sisters. Jake told Kirish about losing his parents young and learning to find family among his friends. As the sun rose, Kirish stood to leave. At the door, she paused. Jake Murphy, I've decided. Tomorrow when they ask, I will say yes. Jake smiled. So will I. The next day, they stood before Emperor Vexthor again. The throne room was packed with nobles and officials. Human diplomats had arrived, including Jake's sister Lynn, who stood nervously in the crowd. You have spent 7 days together, the Emperor announced. Now you must choose. Princess Kirish, do you consent to this marriage? Kirish stood tall. For the first time in her life, she felt no shame. I consent. Gasps and murmurs filled the room. The Emperor's eyes widened slightly. He turned to Jake. And you, human? Do you still wish to proceed? I do, Your Majesty, Jake said clearly. The Emperor leaned back on his throne. He looked thoughtful, almost disappointed. He'd expected them to refuse. This was supposed to be a joke that ended quietly. Instead, it was becoming real. Very well, he said finally. The marriage will take place in 3 weeks. Preparations will begin immediately. He paused. However, there will be a test. If you truly wish to unite our peoples, you must prove that such unity has value. You will create something together. Something that showcases both human and draconian abilities. What kind of something, Your Majesty? Jake asked. A weapon, a fighter craft that combines our technologies. You have 3 weeks to build a working prototype. If you succeed, I will consider this alliance genuine. If you fail, the marriage is cancelled. The Emperor's expression was hard. Do you accept this challenge? Jake looked at Kirish. She met his eyes. They had worked together for less than a week, and now they had to create something that typically took months or years to design. It seemed impossible, but they'd both learned that impossible just meant difficult, and difficult could be overcome with teamwork, creativity, and determination. "We accept," they said together. The crowd erupted in noise. Some draconians shouted approval. Others hissed their displeasure. The human diplomats looked worried. But Jake and Kirisish just looked at each other and nodded. They had work to do. As they left the throne room together, Kirish's sister Zarakesh watched from the shadows. Her perfect scales gleamed with anger. The human had rejected her for that bronze failure. The insult was unbearable. She would not let this marriage happen. She would not let Kirish have happiness. High Lord Thargon stood beside Zarakesh. He was old and powerful, a noble who believed in draconian purity and superiority. The idea of mixing their noble blood with humans disgusted him. "This must be stopped," Thargon hissed quietly. "I agree," Zarakesh replied. "Do what you must. I want that human gone and my sister humiliated." "It will be done," Thargon promised. But Jake and Kirisish knew nothing of these plots. They were already planning their fighter craft, their heads together as they sketched designs and argued about power sources and weapon systems. They were happy. They were working together. They were building something new. And far away, in the dark spaces between stars, a fleet of alien ships moved closer to both human and draconian space. The Velker swarm had been watching and waiting. Soon they would strike. And when they did, everyone would learn that the real threat wasn't each other. The galaxy was about to change, and Jake Murphy and Princess Kirish were at the center of it all, though they didn't know it yet. The workshop became their world. Jake and Kirish worked 18-hour days designing the hybrid fighter. They assembled a team of engineers, both human and draconian. At first, the two groups didn't get along. Draconians thought human methods were crude and inefficient. Humans thought draconian designs were overcomplicated and impractical. "We don't need 17 layers of shielding," complained a human engineer named Greg. "That's ridiculous. And we don't build ships that fall apart in battle," retorted a draconian engineer named Krotak. He was older than most, with deep red scales and wise eyes. "Your human vessels are held together with hope and spare parts." Jake stepped between them. "We need both approaches. Greg, the draconian shields will keep the ship alive longer. Krotak, human modular design means if something breaks, we can fix it quickly in the field. Both approaches have value." Kirish nodded. "We take the best from each species. That's the entire point." Slowly, the team began to work together. They created something new. The fighter had draconian power systems and energy shields, but it had human modular design and redundant systems. It was smaller than a typical draconian warship, but much tougher than a standard human fighter. They named it the Firebrand. While they worked, Jake and Kirisish grew closer. They stole moments together between work sessions, late at night in the workshop, after everyone else had gone to rest. Early in the morning, before the day shift arrived, they talked about everything. They learned each other's languages better. They shared their dreams for the future. "What will we do after the wedding?" Kirish asked one night. They sat on the workshop floor surrounded by blueprints and half-built components. "I haven't thought that far ahead," Jake admitted. "I've been too focused on building this ship and not messing up our chance." "We could split our time between our worlds," Kirish suggested. "Spend part of the year here, part in human space. Build more bridges between our peoples." Jake liked that idea. He took her hand. Her scales were warm against his skin. "Wherever we go, as long as we're together, I'll be happy." But not everyone shared their happiness. High Lord Thargon watched the progress on the Firebrand with growing concern. If Jake and Kirish succeeded, the Emperor might actually support this alliance. That could not be allowed. Draconians were meant to be pure and superior. Mixing with humans would weaken them. Thargon had allies. Several nobles shared his views. And Princess Zarakesh, motivated by jealousy and spite, provided inside information about the project. Together, they plotted sabotage. The wedding was planned to coincide with the fighter's completion. In draconian culture, important events were celebrated with demonstrations of skill. Jake and Kirish planned to fly the Firebrand immediately after the ceremony. It would show everyone what cooperation could achieve. 3 days before the wedding, disaster struck. Jake was testing the fighter's weapon systems when something went wrong. An energy surge ran through the ship. Sparks flew. Alarms screamed. Jake tried to shut down the systems, but they wouldn't respond. "Get out!" Kira shouted. She was in the cockpit with him, monitoring the draconian systems. "The core is going to overload." They barely escaped before the firebrand exploded. The blast tore through one corner of the workshop. 2 engineers were injured. The fighter was completely destroyed. 3 weeks of work gone in seconds. Jake sat on the workshop floor covered in soot, staring at the wreckage. All he could think was that they'd failed. The Emperor would cancel the wedding. Everything would fall apart. Kira knelt beside him. She was also covered in soot and burns. One wing was singed, but her eyes were fierce. "We can rebuild it. In 3 days?" Jake shook his head. "It's impossible." "Since when do you believe in impossible?" Kira helped him stand. "You're the human who crosses the galaxy to marry an ugly princess. You're the mechanic who takes broken things and makes them better. Don't give up now." An investigation discovered the sabotage device in the wreckage. It had been hidden in the power core, designed to cause exactly what happened. Someone had tried to kill them and destroy their work. Emperor Vexthor was furious. He ordered an investigation to find who was responsible. But investigations took time. Time they didn't have. "We'll rebuild the fighter ourselves," Jake announced to the team. "Just us. Me and Kira. If there's a traitor, they won't be able to sabotage what they can't access." "You can't build a fighter in 3 days with just 2 people, Krotak said. But there was respect in his old eyes. "However, I will help. And I trust a few others who I know are loyal." In the end, 6 engineers worked around the clock. Jake, Kirish, Krotak, Greg, and 2 others they trusted completely. They didn't sleep. They barely ate. They worked with desperate focus. The new firebrand was simpler than the first one. They didn't have time for the fancy features. But simpler meant more reliable. Easier to repair. More practical. In a way, the sabotage had made the design better. On the day of the wedding, the fighter was ready. Barely. They'd finished the last welds an hour before the ceremony. The wedding took place in a massive arena that could hold thousands of spectators. Human diplomats sat on one side. Draconian nobles filled the rest. Everyone wondered if the couple would actually go through with it after the sabotage attempt. Jake wore formal clothes that mixed human and draconian styles. Kirash wore armor crafted specifically for her. It was bronze-colored, matching her scales, simple but beautiful. For the first time in her life, she felt beautiful wearing it. The ceremony combined traditions from both cultures. They exchanged vows in both languages. Jake promised to stand beside Kirish through any challenge. Kirish promised to build a future with Jake that neither species could create alone. When they sealed the vows with a kiss, the crowd reacted with mixed emotions. Some cheered. Others hissed disapproval. But it was done. They were married. Immediately after, they walked to the firebrand. The plan was to fly a demonstration circuit around the capital city. A celebration and a proof of concept at once. But as they approached the fighter, guards suddenly shouted warnings. Armed draconians in unmarked armor appeared from the crowd. They opened fire on both the human and draconian guests. Chaos erupted. "It's an attack!" Kirish grabbed Jake and ran for the fighter. Energy blasts hit the ground around them. The workshop team had followed them. Krotak roared and tackled one attacker. Greg and other humans helped guests find cover. But there were too many attackers. This wasn't just sabotage. This was a full assault. Jake and Kirish reached the firebrand and dove inside. Energy blasts scorched the hull. Jake started the engines while Kirish powered up the shields. They lifted off just as explosions rocked the landing pad. "Who's doing this?" Jake shouted over the alarms. "Thargon," Kirish said grimly. She'd spotted the High Lord directing attackers from a safe distance. "He's starting a coup. He wants to stop our marriage and take power while the Empire is distracted." 3 draconian fighters appeared, chasing them. These weren't attacking randomly. They'd been positioned specifically to destroy the firebrand. "Time to see if this ship really works," Jake muttered. He pushed the throttle forward. The firebrand responded beautifully. It was faster than it should be, more agile than expected. Jake's human piloting style, learned from navigating asteroid fields combined with Kirish's tactical knowledge. They dodged between buildings using the city architecture for cover. The enemy fighters followed. They were larger, more powerful, but less maneuverable. Jake led them on a chase through narrow canyons and between tall towers. One enemy fighter crashed trying to follow. Another fired a missile that Jake barely avoided. "We can't keep running," Kirish said. "We need to fight back." "The weapon systems aren't fully tested," Jake warned. "Then we test them now." Jake flipped the firebrand around in a maneuver that seemed impossible. The pursuing fighters overshot. Kirish locked weapons and fired. The draconian energy weapons, powered by human-designed capacitors, performed perfectly. One enemy fighter exploded. The other fled. They returned to the arena to find the battle ending. Imperial guards had overwhelmed Thargon's forces. The High Lord himself was captured, along with Princess Zarakesh, who had been helping him. Their plot had failed. Emperor Vexthor stood in the center of the arena, his wings spread wide, his expression terrible to behold. When Jake and Kirish landed the firebrand, he approached them. "You saved lives today," he said, "both human and draconian. You protected guests under my protection, and you proved that your hybrid design works." He looked at the firebrand, then at his daughter and her new husband. "Perhaps I was wrong. Perhaps this alliance has more value than I thought." Before anyone could celebrate, alarms rang across the city. Every screen activated with an emergency broadcast. A fleet had appeared at the edge of the system. Not human, not draconian. Something else entirely. The Velkar swarm had arrived. Dozens of bioships, each massive and alien. They broadcast one message in all languages: surrender or be destroyed. Everyone stared at the screens in horror. This was a threat neither species could face alone. This was the moment that would change everything. The Velkar fleet hung in space like a swarm of metal insects. Their bioships were unlike anything humans or draconians built. Organic and technological at once, grown rather than constructed. They pulsed with strange energy. Sensors could barely read them. Emperor Vexthor called an emergency council. Human diplomats, draconian military leaders, Jake and Kirish all gathered in the war room. Holographic displays showed the enemy fleet. 36 ships, each the size of a human destroyer, more than enough to devastate the planet. "We tried to warn you," Lynn, Jake's sister, said. She worked in human intelligence. "We've been tracking the Velkar for months. They've conquered 6 systems already. They don't negotiate. They just take what they want," a draconian admiral roared. "Our fleet can handle them. We've never lost a battle." "You've never fought the Velkar," Lynn replied. She showed footage of previous battles. Draconian ships firing their best weapons at Velkar bioships. The weapons barely damaged them. The bioships adapted, their hulls changing to resist the energy blasts. 3 draconian ships destroyed in minutes. They learn. They evolve. Traditional tactics don't work. The room fell silent. Everyone understood. This was different from any enemy they'd faced before. Jake stood up. All eyes turned to him. "We can beat them, but not separately. We need to work together, really together." "What do you propose, human?" the Emperor asked. "We mass-produce the firebrand, use human factory ships and draconian construction facilities. Pool our resources. Human ships can make the modular components fast. Draconian facilities can handle the energy systems and weapons." Jake pulled up calculations. "If we work non-stop, we can have 40 fighters ready in 3 weeks. 3 weeks? A draconian general hissed. "The Velkar will attack in days." "Then we hold them off," Kirish said. She stood beside Jake. "We have one working firebrand. We use it to study their tactics, find their weaknesses, buy time for the others to be built." The Emperor looked at his daughter, really looked at her, maybe for the first time. She stood tall and confident, no longer hiding in shame. Beside her stood a human who had crossed the galaxy for her. Together they'd built something neither species could build alone. "Do it," Vexthor decided. "Spare no expense. Use any resources necessary. Build the fleet." What followed was the most intense cooperation in history. Human factory ships jumped into draconian space. Engineers from both species worked side by side, learning from each other. The prejudices that had divided them became irrelevant in the face of survival. Jake and Kirish led the effort. They solved problems as they arose, combining human improvisation with draconian expertise. When material shortages threatened, Jake redesigned systems to use common materials. When power distribution failed, Kirish rerouted energy flows using new methods. Master Krotok became their strongest supporter. The old engineer worked harder than draconians half his age. "I've learned more in these 3 weeks than in the past 10 years, he told them. This is how engineering should be, no ego. Just solving problems. But building the fighters was only part of the challenge. They needed pilots. Draconian warriors weren't used to the Firebrand's smaller size and human-style controls. Human pilots struggled with the draconian energy management systems. Jake and Kirish created a training program that taught both species to work together. Each fighter would have a mixed crew when possible. A human pilot and a draconian weapons officer, or vice versa. Pete Collins, Jake's friend from the original station, volunteered as a pilot. "You got me into this mess," he joked. "Might as well see it through." 3 weeks and 2 days after the Velcar arrived, the fleet was ready. 42 Firebrand fighters, each one a symbol of cooperation. Each one crewed by warriors from both species who had learned to trust each other. The Velcar had been patient, studying the defenses. But their patience ended. They attacked at dawn, their bioships descending on the planet like a plague. The Firebrand squadron launched to meet them. Jake and Kirish flew the lead ship. It was the original, the one they'd built together. It felt right to lead from it. "All fighters, this is Firebrand 1, Jake broadcast to the squadron. Remember your training. Trust your partner. We're stronger together," the battle began. The Velcar bioships were huge and powerful. Their weapons were devastating. But the Firebrands were fast and agile. They swarmed the bioships like insects, striking from multiple angles. Jake had studied the Velcar tactics during the waiting period. He'd found a pattern. The bioships adapted to sustained attacks, but they struggled with rapid shifts in strategy. "Keep moving," he shouted to the squadron. "Change your approach every pass. Don't let them adapt, it worked." A draconian pilot made a run from above while a human pilot attacked from below. The bioship's defenses couldn't adjust fast enough. It took damage. Another coordinated strike, this time from a different angle. More damage. The bioship began to list, but the Velcar learned fast. They started focusing fire on individual fighters. 3 Firebrands were destroyed in quick succession. 7 more took heavy damage. "We're losing fighters," Kirish reported. "We need a new strategy." Jake saw it then. The Velcar Queen ship. It sat in the center of the fleet, larger than the others. It was coordinating the attacks, distributing tactics to the other bioships. If they could disable it, the rest would lose coordination. "All fighters, new plan," Jake broadcast. "We're going after the Queen ship. Coordinate strike. Everyone hits at once from different vectors. They can't adapt to everything at once, it was risky." The Queen ship was the most heavily defended, but it was their best chance. The squadron reformed. They came at the Queen ship from every direction. Above, below, all sides, 40 fighters attacking simultaneously. The Velcar defenses scrambled to respond. They couldn't cover everything. Weapons fire lit up space like fireworks. Human pilots used their improvisational skills to find gaps in the defenses. Draconian weapons officers unleashed devastating energy blasts. The Queen ship's bioarmor buckled under the assault. Jake and Kirish made the final run. They pushed the Firebrand to its limits, dodging defensive fire that could vaporize them in an instant. Kirish locked all weapons on one point, the weak spot they'd identified. "Fire everything," Jake shouted. Energy beams lanced out from the Firebrand. They punched through the Queen ship's armor and struck something vital. The massive bioship shuddered. Its energy signature went crazy. Then it began to break apart. With their queen gone, the other Velcar ships lost coordination. They still fought, but without the unified tactics. The Firebrand squadron pressed the advantage. One by one, the bioships were destroyed or disabled. Finally, the remaining Velcar ships retreated. They jumped away, leaving the system. The battle was over. The Firebrand squadron returned to Draknor to cheering crowds. Humans and Draconians celebrated together. The impossible had happened. They'd won not because one species was superior, but because they'd worked as one. In the aftermath, Emperor Vexthor made an official announcement. The Draconian Empire and humanity would form a true alliance, not just diplomatic words, but genuine cooperation, mixed crews, shared technology, cultural exchanges. "My daughter and her husband showed us the way," the Emperor said in his broadcast. "I sent Kirish away as a joke. I thought to humiliate her and humanity both. Instead, she saved us all. She is not ugly. She never was. She is strong, brilliant, and brave, and I am proud to call her my daughter." Kirish watched the broadcast with tears in her eyes. Years of rejection and shame were finally washed away. Not because she changed, but because others finally saw what had always been there. Jake held her hand. "I told you that you were beautiful." "You did," Kirish agreed. She leaned down and kissed him. "Thank you for seeing me." The Firebrand program expanded. More fighters were built. More pilots trained. The cooperation that started as a desperate necessity became the foundation of something greater. Trade agreements, scientific partnerships, cultural festivals, humans and Draconians learning from each other. Jake and Kirish became ambassadors traveling between both worlds. They helped establish the Firebrand Academy, where engineers and pilots from both species trained together. The workshop where they'd first bonded became a symbol of cooperation. 5 years later, they had children, twins, a girl with bronze scales and green eyes, a boy with brown hair and amber eyes. The children were healthy, happy, and a living bridge between species. Scientists studied them with wonder. Philosophers debated what they meant for the future. But to Jake and Kirish, they were simply their kids. The twins played in the workshop where their parents had built the first Firebrand. The original fighter sat in a place of honor, preserved as a historical monument. But there were newer ships too. Improved designs, better technology. Each generation built on what came before. One evening, as the sun set over the Draconian capital, Jake and Kirish stood on a balcony overlooking the city. Human and Draconian ships flew overhead in formation, mixed crews training together. Below in the streets, citizens of both species walked together peacefully. "Your father sent you away as an insult," Jake said. "He meant to humiliate both of us." "He did," Kirish agreed. "It was meant to be a joke." "Best joke ever told," Jake said with a smile. "Look what it became."